And now I'd like to introduce the Deputy Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, Bob Percisepi.
Hello, everyone. How are you all feeling on a Monday morning? Great. Yes. Well, welcome to the very first White House Summit on Environmental Education. And I couldn't be happier to see all of you here today. You know, you all are representing universities, the United States government, state government, environmental and community groups, as well as corporations and other new partners that we hope to keep building this network. And all recognizing the importance of educating the American public and students from K all the way through retirement. And so we're grateful that you've taken the time to come here today and to help us coordinate and improve our efforts as we look forward to the future. You know, on the environmental front, we've made tremendous progress. The air is cleaner than it was 40 years ago. The water is cleaner than it was 40 years ago. We've made tremendous progress in protecting our natural resources throughout the country. And that effort is partly due to many of the people in the room here. And many of those efforts have helped protect those resources, human health, and the environment. But our shared efforts have reached millions of people. Millions of people have received environmental education or natural resources education or outdoor education or understanding of their own personal actions and how it affects the environment. Students in all 50 states have been able to participate, and they've learned about environmental factors in asthma all the way to how to protect groundwater. But these challenges that we face today, even in face of all the progress that we've made in the past, are more difficult. When we start looking at pollutants and toxics that we may not have known about 40 years ago, that are not visible to the eye as burning rivers or dye running in the stream or raw sewage in the stream, they're not as visible as they used to be. Then when you start thinking about challenges like global climate change and the global nature of some of the environmental issues we face, those are different than what was right in front of our faces 40 years ago. So this means our approach to environmental education needs to continue to evolve. We need to get more comprehensive and be more collaborative, and that's one of the key issues that this summit is all about, being more collaborative, thinking beyond the science class and more holistically about how people learn about the world that they live in. We have to move from beyond K through 12, as some people call it, K through gray. We really have to look at that long term. And today's summit can really help us jumpstart and continue the progress that many of you have been involved with to begin with. We need to be expanding the network. Many of you have been working for years to build a powerful network. And we want to continue that effort, and we want to put more wind in those sails. We have to reconfirm our commitments, even in tight budgets, which you will hear about, I'm sure, during the course of the day. We have ways to make progress, and we want to assure that all of our resources, yours and ours at the federal level, are coordinated so that we can maximize our effectiveness, so that the whole of our effort is greater than the sum of the parts of our efforts. And that is what is really important, and that is what we will need to build an environmentally literate society. So I look forward to working with all of you today, and all of you, I am sure, will inspire us to do even greater things at the federal level. So thank you again for being here today. I now want to introduce the White House Director of Public Engagement, John Carson. John is a strong supporter of expanding our connections and our overall reach as a federal government. So John, welcome to the summit.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the White House, and welcome to everyone who is following along online. I want to start by thanking you once again for being here today, but also thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm sure like many of the speakers here today and everyone in the audience, we all have our own story about that moment during our education that got us interested in environmental issues. I know for me, it was my grade school connecting us to the amazing resource we had in our backyard, the Mississippi River, that without that connection and without that focus and without the work of a group just like many of those in the audience, I might have not made that connection, and it really changed my life. So thank you for what you're doing. And with that, the ask that I have for all of you today is to tell those stories. Tell the story of why you're here. Tell the story of the summit today. Talk about what you liked. Talk about what you didn't like if you're online. We are using today the hashtag EEWeek. And if you don't know what a hashtag is, ask yourself why, and go get yourself a Twitter account after this. Administrator Jackson has a great one. You can tweet her at Lisa P. Jackson. And share, let's make this more than about just the folks who are watching online today, just the folks who are here in the room. Environmental education, the wonderful thing about it in this day and age is the ability to connect people all across the country online. But as we all know, you need that connection. You need the work that groups like yours are doing every day to connect young people to the environment, to the natural resources in their backyard. And with that, I have the honor to introduce someone who is a leader in our administration, not just on making enormous, enormous gains for public health and safety, but for being that inspiring leader. I've seen her and her ability to inspire young people, to make them think about maybe this is an area I would like to work in, and show them really how much can be done. So I'd like to introduce our administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Lisa Jackson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bob. He said he's my deputy. I always tease him. He's everyone's deputy. Bob is the deputy of our Environmental Protection Agency. He does an amazing job, so thank you. And I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing Secretary Duncan in just a second. Forgive me, I am learning the perils of going to the gym and then racing over here. So I'm like a mess, a hot mess this morning. But thanks for joining us at the first ever White House Summit on Environmental Education. I'm actually very proud of this moment, proud to be able to be here to welcome you all to what I expect, and knowing some of the groups in the audiences and some of the friends out there, a very productive dialogue back and forth about the future of this important topic, environmental education, and how we can work together in the time ahead to ensure a good and vibrant future. This is a very important gathering at a very, very important time, because the fact is that environmental education itself has changed. In the 4 decades that we've had an EPA and the organizations like yours who've been doing this all-important work, and largely because of our successes together, environmental education has grown into something new. While that presents us with challenges, it also offers us opportunities to move into the next phase of EE and expand environmental literacy in ways that we should absolutely take advantage of. I'll say a bit more about those in a moment, but I want to first say a word about how critical environmental education is to the work of protecting the health and environment of millions of Americans. As you all know, we are less than a week away from the 42nd Earth Day. As we gear up to take part in a celebration that will include events across the country and around the globe, it's worth remembering that the very first Earth Day was actually planned as a teach-in. At the root of this movement, at the foundation of an event that galvanized the American people, led to the creation of EPA, led to the passage of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, amongst others, at the very beginning was environmental education. Everything we do today began as an effort to raise awareness about the way our lives and Earth and our health and our economy are touched by the quality of our air, our water, and our land. It continues to be critical to what we do. As one example, environmental education is vital to one of my top priorities as EPA administrator, expanding the conversation on environmentalism and working for environmental justice. This is also something I saw in very stark terms in my own life. As many of you know and have heard, I grew up in New Orleans. My mother was still living there when Hurricane Katrina struck. I happened to be with her because her birthday is August 27th, so we were down visiting, and I ended up driving her out of the city. Yes, my mother lost everything she had, like so many others. After Katrina, we talked about the fact that one of the reasons that the hurricane was so devastating and the flooding was so bad was that the marshes and wetlands south of the city had been so destabilized by siltation and by oil and gas lines that allowed salt water to intrude in the freshwater marshes. Those are the area's natural defenses, and they are disappearing rapidly. Every 38 minutes, a football field-sized parcel of land turns to open water. Many of you know those statistics. But what you don't know is today my 82-year-old mother can go head-to-head with almost any expert on the effects of that environmental damage and loss. She makes an informed and compelling case, and as formed as compelling as any, really, an argument about the need to preserve and protect those natural buffers, about what we would call their natural value, their capital. But before the storm and the flooding, she and many of the people who lost so much to Katrina, and in my mind had the most to lose as a result of a hurricane like Katrina or Rita, did not make that connection. As a result, they saw those swamps as a nuisance, something to be filled for development, rather as their protection against a natural disaster. It was a very harsh environmental education, and it's just one example of many. Thousands of communities across the nation are bearing heavy burdens of environmental degradation, burdens like increased asthma, or heart disease, or cancer. And I feel an urgency to make sure that our environmental education efforts reach those communities so they can see the impact their surroundings have on their families' health and their prosperity, and so that they can take that environmental literacy and call for change. So environmental education is very important to me and to the EPA. That is one of the reasons we've called this summit together. Another reason is that, as I said, environmental education is changing. We see new interest from new parts of the population, multiple entry points for starting a discussion about environmental education, and many overlaps between those entry points. Foremost amongst our changes must be the treatment of environmental education as more than a K through 12 endeavor. We now know, and many of you practice this, as a lifetime and lifelong learning opportunity. That's not to say that we don't see new opportunities in traditional frameworks. For example, the chance to expand environmental education beyond earth science or ecology classes, and to have people talking about environmental impacts in civics and social studies, in economics, even and especially in gym classes as young people get outside. This year we had another great roster of winners of the Presidential Innovation Award for Environmental Educators, teachers who are doing creative things to engage and challenge their students and shape the environmental protectors of the next generation. We're fortunate to have some of those young people with us today, our President's Environmental Youth Award winners, and I look forward to recognizing their accomplishments a little later today. Along with new ideas in our schools, we know there are opportunities to seize in our marketplaces and in our media. This year we have been celebrating the 20th anniversary of Energy Star. In the last 2 decades, there have been more than 5 billion Energy Star products sold. Energy Star label is recognized by nearly, get this, 80% of consumers. So we can reach consumers. And over the years, American families, small and large businesses, schools, and other entities have saved a combined total of nearly $230 billion on their utility bills, and prevented more than 1.7 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. It's just one great example of how the market can help us reap environmental and health protection while also educating the public. And I'm glad to know that we have many private sector participants in today's summit, and I hope bringing us all together will help spark some productive ideas. And of course, media, both new and traditional, provide us with a chance to reach out and educate millions. Some of you probably remember the old PSAs. Everywhere I go, someone raises their hand and remembers the crying Indian. Or give a hoot, don't pollute. If you don't remember, that means you're of a certain generation. Those were once the front line in environmental outreach. Today, our ability to communicate in compelling ways has increased by orders of magnitude. We now have the chance to connect thousands of people on social networks and get them to compete on energy savings or commit to an environmental activity in their community. We can have NASCAR or sports teams publicizing the importance of going green while taking their own steps to cut pollution and waste. Last month, an organization called the Green Sports Alliance celebrated its first anniversary. In 1 year, they have expanded rapidly. What started with 6 teams and 5 venues in the Pacific Northwest has grown to include more than 40 teams and nearly 90 venues across North America, representing 12 professional leagues as well as the NCAA. We can also use social media to hear more voices and open up the conversation, particularly to young people. Local issues can get global exposure when they go online. We can make green viral. If YouTube can make those Charlie Bit Me kids famous, then we can make climate change famous too. Okay, if you don't know who Charlie Bit Me is, then you are also of a certain generation, but not the other generation before. Now I know that there are concerns for many of you, and especially with regard to the changes that we're making at EPA and throughout the federal government. That's also why it's important that we're here together today. I want to take this opportunity to assure you at the outset that we are still very committed to this effort. To allow EPA to better serve the public while promoting environmental literacy, the agency is proposing to integrate $5 million across major environmental programs to carry out environmental outreach activities. That includes support for the National Environmental Education Foundation, support for teacher training, and grants to local organizations to further their environmental education activities. That funding accompanies the efforts we are making to more fully incorporate environmental education into the work of each of EPA's program officers. Rather than the centralized EE infrastructure, we want to see greater connections to the efforts and decisions EPA makes on a daily basis. That's why we're focusing our environmental education efforts on a program level. We will continue to ensure that all of EPA's content and information is available to students and educators and communities, and we plan to continue expanding successful programs like student and teacher award programs. The bottom line is this: we still have funding, and we still have hardworking staff people who are committed to EPA's environmental education mission. I'm also happy to tell you today about an important change we're making across the government. I'm proud to announce that we are reconvening the Federal Task Force on Environmental Education. By reconvening, yeah, it's a good thing. By reconvening, you'll be talking about it a lot today. By reconvening the Federal Task Force on EE, we aim to take our distinct and separate environmental education efforts and improve coordination across the federal government. Through that collaboration, we see specific opportunities to not only work better with each other, but to coordinate better with stakeholders. We hope to create opportunities for building and strengthening innovative EE partnerships between federal agencies. For example, the MOU that the Departments of Interior and Education have recently signed. The task force needs and seeks to provide a lasting framework for collaboration and coordination between federal agencies regarding environmental education. It will help us identify opportunities that will give us increased public and private partnerships, thus broadening and diversifying partners and stakeholders in environmental education. We also hope to better coordinate and leverage funding to increase the impacts of grants and programs at community level. EPA and the Department of Interior and the Department of Education will provide leadership to jumpstart the task force at the outset. But we are expecting participation from 13 more of our administration partners. This is where you see the true scope of environmental education today. The task force will bring together everyone from health to transportation to the Council on Environmental Quality to labor to small business agencies. We all have a role to play in environmental education. We want to be certain that we are active on the multiple fronts presented by environmental education today. And the Federal Task Force is an important step in that direction. Environmental education remains a critical part of our mission to protect human health and the environment. We face a number of changes in the time ahead, some of which will present challenges, and others that will open up a range of new opportunities and possibilities. That is why we have the summit. That's why we've asked you all to be here. Many of you have helped define environmental education and can be credited for the enormous successes that I just spoke of. It is now up to all of us, working across sectors and disciplines, to come together and define what environmental education can and should be in the years to come. Thank you all for your important work and for making the time to be here this morning and all day. With that, I'm happy to turn this over to our wonderful Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan.
Thank you. Please give Lisa another round of applause. She's been an extraordinary partner. I've enjoyed working with her and look forward to working with her going forward on the task force. I just want to make 4 basic points this morning. First of all, just to say a big thank you to all of you. And many of you for decades have been leading this movement. And I think so much of leadership nationally, frankly, has come from community groups, come at the state level. And I'll talk for our departments specifically. I don't think historically we've done enough in this area. So we're trying to be a better partner. You guys have been extraordinarily helpful in pushing our thinking and moving us to the next level. But know that we're in this for the long haul, and we want to do so much more. But we've moved so far as a country, not so much because of what we've done at the Department of Ed, but because of all of your leadership. And a long way to go, but some things to celebrate as well. Over the past 10 years, we've doubled the number of students taking the AP Environmental Studies test. We think those numbers can go up significantly more. You should be proud of how far we've come, and know we want to be a full and equal partner with you going forward. Secondly, the world of education is changing in very, very profound ways. And I feel this huge sense of urgency. We have a dropout rate in this country that's staggering. 25% of our young people drop out each year. It's 1 million young people leaving our schools for our streets. We all know there are no good jobs, none in the legal economy for them. We know we have an achievement gap that is absolutely untenable, and dividing our country between those with good educational opportunity and those without, I think is, just unbelievable. And if we don't close that, we marginalize a whole segment of our nation's population. So how do we educate in very different ways? How do we engage students in their own education? How do we get them excited about coming to school every single day? I actually think EE can be a huge tool to doing that. And our children don't want to just sit and be lectured to and memorized, and they can obviously look up anything they want on Google. They want to be engaged in real projects. They want to be engaged in hands-on learning. They want to know what they're doing in this class is relevant to their community. And we see amazing teachers, amazing principals, amazing schools doing this every single day through environmental education. And again, as Lisa talked about, this is lifelong learning. But when my 4- and 5-year-old children at home are coming home and talking to me and my wife about recycling and making sure we're putting things in the right bin and turning off our water when we're brushing our teeth, how often do we have 4- and 5-year-olds that passionate about what they learn in school coming back and pushing their parents at home? So whether it's 4-year-olds, whether it's 14-year-olds, whether it's 82-year-old moms, there's just a huge vehicle here to have young people understand why what they're learning is important. We know the jobs of the future in the STEM area. What better ways to teach the STEM fields than through EE? And so whether it's STEM, whether it's, again, cross-curricular, as Lisa was talking about, there's just a huge tool here. And we're seeing, again, amazing creativity from educators at every single level. We want to make that the norm rather than the exception. I always talk about moving from pockets of excellence, islands of excellence, to systems of excellence. But I think so much of what's going on, where we're seeing achievement gaps close, where we're seeing dropout rates go down, where we're seeing more and more young people college and career ready, it's because environmental education is just a normal part of what they're doing. And so highlighting those best practices, continuing to fund innovation through things like our I3 fund, Invest in Innovation, with a huge outlay there to really interesting partnerships at the local level, many STEM related. We think so much of what's happening due to your leadership are changing young people's lives and changing their perception of their own education. And for that, we're extraordinarily grateful. Third, in terms of education changing so much, obviously our economy is changing. And we can't try and prepare children for the jobs that are gone, the jobs of the past. We have to prepare them for the jobs of the future. And so many of the jobs, green energy jobs, sustainability jobs, are in the areas where you guys are working. And if we're serious about understanding the link between education and the economy, serious about growing a strong economy, we need many, many more young people where these skills are second nature. This is part of who they are. It's not some foreign language they're trying to learn down the road. So this link between green jobs and great environmental education, we think is extraordinarily strong, and we think if we do a much better job of this, our young people be in a really strong position to enter the economy and be productive and to be contributors rather than on the margins of society. And then the final thing I'll just mention briefly is obviously we're going to announce the first winners of our Green Ribbon Schools next week. And this has been an amazing, amazing program. We weren't smart enough to come up with the idea. You guys did, pushed us on. Our teams worked amazingly hard. But to see the amount of innovation and creativity that has come from schools, that has come from states, we have some very tough choices to make. We announced some fantastic winners. But this program has so far exceeded my wildest hopes in this first year. And so much of what Lisa and I do is tough and hard and controversial. This one so far has had no enemies. It's been just an absolute winner. And yeah, well, we'll take that as well. We'll probably get some enemies at some point, but so far, this has just been an absolute home run. And again, to see so much interest every single day when I look at the news clips, there's stories about schools, about communities, and what they're doing around the Green Ribbon Schools. And for just the first year, in a short time frame, this huge outpouring of interest. We'll announce the winners next week. We'll bring them here to Washington in a couple months. But to see where this thing can grow from the inaugural year to where we can be 3 years or 5 years from now, again, with your help, with your leadership and your support, I think it's just absolutely stunning. So I think we're on the cusp of something that's really, really exciting. And we want to do more. Like I said, we want to be a better partner. As I began with, I feel this huge sense of urgency, but if we're trying to change students' lives, if we're trying to give every single child a world-class, well-rounded education, your ability to partner with us, to push us, to provide resources at the local community level, our great teachers, our great principals, they want to make a difference. They want to do something. They don't always have the tools. And if we can provide them with the tools, I think we'll see much better outcomes for our young people. So thanks for being great partners. Thanks for all your passion. Thanks for your leadership. And again, count us in for being in this for the long haul. Thanks for having me here this morning.
Hi again, everyone. What I'd like to do now is introduce our next speaker, David Hayes, the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Interior, a friend and colleague. All of you probably know that the Department of Interior is the steward of the country's largest outdoor classroom. From icons in the west to urban parks in the east and on the west coast, in New York City and Virginia, to the American Great Outdoors initiative that Secretary Salazar and David have been working on. David is a strong advocate and a practitioner of inspired interagency management. So David, come on up.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's great to be here this morning, and thank you to Lisa Jackson and to Bob for putting this summit together. It's overdue, and it's part of what this administration cares about, which is educating our young folks about the importance of environment. And Bob stole my line. America's Great Outdoors is really the best classroom that we can have for teaching environmental education. Now, Lisa mentioned it, John Carson mentioned it. All of us have our own personal stories of why we care about the environment. And typically, they go back to our youth, to some experiences we had, perhaps in that woods down the street where we used to bicycle or we used to take a walk, or that stream that we used to follow up and look at all the critters. And maybe our folks took us out to a national park where our eyes really went large. At the Department of the Interior, what we want to do is provide that opportunity for today's youth. And Secretary Salazar, from the first day he came in, said, we have to pump up our youth programs. And environmental education is endemic in that effort to pump up our youth programs. We've increased our hiring of youth in the Department of the Interior by 35%. Today, we pay more than 22,000 young people, ages 15 to 25, every year, outside in the environment. using our 600 million acres of public estate, our national parks, our Bureau of Land Management lands, our tribal lands that we work with our sovereign nations on, and our national wildlife refuges as the educational classrooms for folks. Now, you know the President launched America's Great Outdoors a couple of years ago. One aspect of that initiative involved Lisa Jackson, Nancy Sutley, Ken Salazar, and Tom Vilsack going out and holding listening sessions all around the country, talking to literally tens of thousands of folks and asking them, what do you want this administration to do in terms of an America's Great Outdoors initiative? What are the important facets that we should be focusing on? And one of the delivery points back was, we want you to again focus back on urban parks, on opportunities for urban America and for underrepresented communities to have exposure to the great outdoors. We're doing that big time. Secretary Salazar and Mike Bloomberg together in New York City are going to create the world's largest overnight campground on Floyd Bennett Field next to Jamaica Bay. You bet. Tens of thousands of kids are going to have their first overnight experience in Jamaica Bay. Now, JFK's right there, so there's a little bit of urban intrusion, but it's a fabulous spot. We're doing the same kind of thing with the Santa Monica Mountains in Los Angeles. The St. Louis Arch is becoming a new place for education for kids. San Francisco, Mayor Rahm Emanuel of Chicago, and we are working to bring kids to the Indiana Sand Dunes and to a great South Chicago new park that we're working with him on. You're going to hear a lot from us today. We want your ideas on how we can continue to attract youth and provide opportunities for them to learn about the environment. Let me mention a couple of things very briefly, and then I do look forward to getting feedback from today's conference, because we need your help to improve what we're trying to do. Virtually all of our bureaus are deeply engaged in environmental education. I love the National Park Service's moniker. They say they're America's greatest university when it comes to environmental education, with 397 branch campuses. And it's true. They have put together more than 900 lesson plans that are offered by 200 parks, working with teachers. They've got 100 electronic field trips and e-trips for folks to utilize. They've got 50 interactive online activities to challenge children to complete critical thinking-based modules in order to earn the coveted Web Ranger patch. How many of you have that? And a very cool teacher to ranger to teacher program, where we take classroom teachers, give them summer jobs as rangers, and then they go back to the classroom. We currently have more than 100 teachers a year in this program. It's been going for nearly 10 years. Fish and Wildlife Service also is working hard with their Junior Duck Stamp Conservation and Design Program. 30,000 youth last year participate in this, teaching wetlands and ecological restoration using outdoor classrooms, our national wildlife refuges. Also, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and others are working on the Let's Move initiative, the First Ladies initiative. We have two adjuncts to that, Let's Move Outside and Let's Move in Indian Country. And the Let's Move in Indian Country initiative is spearheaded by Keith Moore, who's in the back, who's the head of our Bureau of Indian Education. And speaking of, we with the Department of Defense have the two largest federal education systems within our four walls. We are teaching tens of thousands of Indian kids in our Bureau of Indian Education schools, a wonderful opportunity. Finally, but not least, we have Dr. Marcia McNutt of the United States Geological Survey, the premier earth science agency in the world, as Secretary Salazar likes to say. And every year, Marcia and her organization teach 1,500 young scientists, give them an opportunity through summer intern programs, including the longest continuing running summer science internships in the country, to give field training and science opportunities for our kids. We're very excited about the fact that as an administration, as Bob Perciasepi alluded to, we work together across our silos, if you will. And Lisa mentioned the new memorandum of understanding that we have with the Department of Education in that regard. That came out of the President's visit to our department in February, the most recent time that he's brought us all together to talk about the America's Great Outdoors Initiative. We have a very sophisticated and far-reaching work with the Department of Education to infuse their expertise in how we teach kids with the resources and the 70,000 Department of Interior employees we have who can provide the outreach that we're all looking for to enhance environmental education. And with Lisa Jackson commenting and mentioning that the task force will be brought together again, Interior is looking forward to being a full partner in this effort, working with all of you. Let's re-energize, reconfirm the importance of environmental education in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And thanks to all the folks. David mentioned some of them, but I see so many folks in the audience who are really the leaders of our natural conservation and environmental movements on the education side inside the government. Thank you all for coming, because it's really important to spend some time together today hearing from the folks who are outside, who are working sometimes with little or no resources and need to make sure that we're combining our efforts. So thank you all for your leadership and for being here. Now I get to have a little fun. Young people, before we all talk each other to death, we're going to honor the President's Environmental Youth Award winners. It is an impressive honor, and I know I speak for President Obama when I say congratulations to our winners, and thank you for your efforts to help our communities and protect the future of our planet. But let me start by also recognizing the parents, the teachers, the mentors, the friends, the others who put in the time, probably couldn't be here today, but were really instrumental in helping our incredible award-winning students. The winners of this award were chosen because they represented the best work in each of EPA's 10 regions across the nation. Each winning project tackled an important environmental issue and brought with it a reminder that environmental protection is everyone's job. I'm going to read out those who are here and ask them to step up to receive their award. We also have several who couldn't be here, but because their projects are so important, and I know they represented a lot of work, I'm going to give us all a flavor of those projects as well. It's my honor to recognize all of our winners. So from EPA's Region 1, which is really the New England region of our country, we have Marky Palermo for genetic analysis of the brown, brook, and tiger trout populations within the Lake Champlain Basin. Marky. Recognizing the environmental challenge of declining trout numbers in the Lake Champlain Basin, took DNA samples of various kinds of brook trout to determine if genetic analysis could be used to solve the problem. Her research supported her theory that hybridization had occurred within the basin, and the results were shared widely. In fact, her research paper was accepted by the Journal of Experimental Secondary Science for the January-February 2012 issue. Okay. Everyone now. That's what's going to happen. As well it should. Congratulations. All right. From our Region 2 office, which is New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, our winner couldn't be with us, but it's Christopher Yao for the Planet Green program. It's connected to his nonprofit organization called Kids Change the World, which is designed to empower young people with startup grants, websites, and other grassroots services, and help them start charitable and nonprofit programs to benefit the environment. Our Region 3 winner from the Mid-Atlantic region is Megan Rosenberger for her project Hydroelectricity Through Rainwater Collection. Congratulations. Are we Megan or Megan? Megan. Megan has her rainwater collection project has been ongoing for 2 years now with the goal of generating increasing levels of electricity through a hydroelectric system. Ultimately, she generated 3 times the electricity in the second year of her project than in the first year. She also worked with a local watershed organization to implement additional rain barrels in her community to save water and prevent flooding. Congratulations. All right, I'm going to take pictures in a second. So then this will go faster if I don't come over in time. All right, from our Region 4 office, which is sort of the southeastern part of our country, we have Andrew Day for the Choosing to Lead Environmental Action Now, or CLEAN Club, storm drain tagging, and environmental education. Andrew noticed that in his home, Pulaski County, they needed to address rising levels of pollution in the, help me Andrew, Ocmulgee River. Last year, he advocated for a storm drain tagging project in the city of Hawkinsville and convinced the city manager to help with the project. To get peer support, Andrew started a club for 4-H students called the Clean Club. Congratulations, Andrew. All right, from our Midwestern office, we have Sachin Rudra Raju. Sachin Rudra Raju, he's not able to be with us. Sachin launched the community recycling campaign to raise community awareness and provide alternative solutions for old or outdated computers and electronics. CRC volunteers collect electronic items, refurbish them, and give them to local charities for reuse. Items that cannot be refurbished are sent to proper e-waste centers for recycling and disposal. So far, CRC is responsible for diverting thousands of pounds of electronic waste from landfills. Our region, yep, give me a hand. Our Region 6 PIA Award winner is Ainsley Campbell for her project Bringing Bats to Beaver's Bend. Ainsley's AP, Environmental Science, we heard the Secretary talk about that. Her class sparked her interest in the long-term harmful effects of pesticides, as well as the huge numbers of disease-carrying insects in local parks. She decided to design and implement a project to help her community solve the problem of insect control through environmentally safe and sustainable methods. She worked with her local government and community to build and hang 10 bat boxes in a wooded park near her home. Then she used the internet to help explain to her fellow citizens why it was a good idea to bring bats to her hometown. Congratulations, Ainsley. Our winners from Region 7, which is really the agricultural heartland of our country, couldn't be with us today. But they are the members of the Niobrara High School class of 2013 in Nebraska for their Purple Loosestrife project. Their winning project is a wetlands conservation effort focused on controlling purple loosestrife, an aggressively invasive plant species. This project started out as a one-day-a-year community service project that has grown into a year-long intensive conservation program, a legacy passing from one biology class to the next. The result of their work has been an increase in biodiversity in wetlands that were once completely infested with what's called the purple plague. Congratulations to them. EPA Region 8 is represented by Christina and Eric Baer for their Radon Awareness Project. In November of 2010, Christina and Eric Baer developed the Radon Awareness Project to raise awareness about the connections between radon exposure and lung cancer. Christina and Eric collaborated with various local, state, and federal agencies, as well as other organizations, to educate homeowners on radon awareness and testing. They presented information about radon to community outreach groups and government officials, demanding greater attention to this invisible killer. Congratulations. EPA Region 9 is represented by Rebecca Gordon, Rachel Gordon, Kathleen McKeegan, and Kayla Sadwick from Oak Park High School for their project, The Whale. Our Region 9 office, I should have said our Region 8 office is the Rocky Mountain region of our country. Region 9 is California and the Southwest. Their project is called The Whale. Since 2009, these high school students have been raising awareness about large container ships that strike and kill migrating whales in their region. They developed a lesson plan for middle and high school students about whale migration and have done extensive research through the years regarding recommendations and petitions to move the shipping lanes out of the sensitive areas and reduce the speed of the ships as they transit through them. The students also authored a creative whale activity book that they use with elementary school students in the district. And last but certainly not least, our region... Certainly not least, our Region 10, which is the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. Another group that couldn't unfortunately be with us today are Carl Breidenbach, William Donofrio, and Nathan Wong for the Boise Riverbank Restoration Project. Carl, William, and Nathan, along with community support, undertook the rehabilitation of a stretch of eroding bank on the Boise River Greenbelt. Although the project took almost 2 years, it will last for decades, improving trout habitat, water quality, and creating a beautiful spot to stop along the Boise River. So let's give them a hand. And now let's continue giving a hand to all of our PIA award winners. I hope that each of you will continue to stay involved and continue building on your amazing success. We're counting on you to keep exploring and innovating to protect our planet. Thank you for your hard work and dedication on these issues.